I'll just hand it over to you for him.
Will you?
Yeah, very good. Call to order.
I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting, Washington County to order.
Warren County will call the Higher Education and Personnel Committee to order.
as well as finance to order.
All right, we ready? Oh wait, you were waiting for us. Well, good morning everyone and welcome. Happy Friday. We've got a big day ahead of us and I hope you will join us this afternoon at 4 o'clock for our official ribbon cutting of Adirondack Hall. You'll be, I think, overwhelmed at how wonderful it is, and it's been such a flurry of activity all week as students came back on campus Wednesday. So I'm just going to provide you a quick update on where we are at the college. That's our agenda for today. So we'll run through that. So first day of classes was Wednesday. Our enrollment was trending a little bit down compared to last year. But housing is at occupancy, which is a good thing for us. The largest increase in our students this fall was from students from out of the area. But the good news is we saw kind of a stable enrollment for Warren and Washington County, which is important to us, of course, because that's our primary audience. But also it's an indicator that we still have a strong interest and strong presence in both counties. And so we're proud of that. We did see pretty substantial increases in enrollment in our new cybersecurity program. And nursing, we also saw an increase in the interest in nursing, which we, of course, is also important not only for the fact that we have this brand new facility, but also to meet the needs of our local region in healthcare. And our college and the high school program, which really extends in a lot of different ways, both courses that we offer in the high school and then our early college high school program where students come on campus for half of their day, continues to grow, which we think is a really important gateway for students to at least, even if they only take one college level course in high school, the predictability of them doing well in college greatly increases. So we continue to work with all of our school districts to identify courses that might be beneficial for students in terms of getting their first step into college. Our priorities for the coming year, and we did finalize our strategic plan, which I shared quite a bit with you back in June for those of you who were here. And on the back table before you leave is just kind of a nice succinct brochure about our strategic goals going forward for the next couple of years for the college. But for this year, of course, we will continue to work on spring and summer enrollment. So having a slight decrease, which really was about 72 students. So in the scheme of things, it's not as terrible as it may sound in terms of decline. But we'll continue to work on new initiatives to support increasing enrollment in the spring and next summer. So we're focused on that. We are entering a whole new era of rebranding and marketing our Wilton Center, which Saratoga County is such a large part of our service area as well. And we want to make sure that the residents of Saratoga County really know what we offer at the Wilton Center, and it's an opportunity for us to continue to leverage that asset in Saratoga County. Every 10 years, we are in the process of doing a self-study that we have to submit for continued accreditation by the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. Without accreditation, we can't offer financial aid, so it's very important to us. And of course, it's also important to be sure that all the work that we do across the campus meets the highest standards set by accrediting bodies. So we will be very busy this year in our self-study process. There are teams across the campus from all different departments. Our academic, our administrative, our support staff are all involved to really examine ourselves to say, what are we doing really well? What do we need to continue to improve to ensure that we're meeting the highest standards? So although it's not the most fun work that you get to do, it's really important work, and it will take a lot of our personnel time in the next year preparing for a visit from our review team in April of 2020. Opening the Culinary Center, of course, is a big initiative for us, and we have opened. We opened on Wednesday for classes. The restaurant season will open in the beginning of October. We need to give the students some time to learn and be prepared to open a new restaurant. And just as a reminder, we've always had a restaurant. We had one on Bay Road, and now we're moving that to downtown. We've launched a new event services office on campus. And you know, as we talk about, and particularly when Anne-Marie shares, when we talk about long-term financial sustainability, one of the things that we want to continue to try to address is what are other sources of revenue that we can generate as a college to serve not only the community, but also to think of some new innovative and entrepreneurial ways to provide services. And so with, of course, what you'll see today, if you haven't already, and I think you've all been, or many of you have been in our Northwest Bay Conference Center, we now have space on campus that we can utilize as a community asset to invite more of our workforce partners in to do training here, move into a conferences type of environment, which we've never really done before. So now we have not only that center, of course, we have housing, we have Wilton, we have the Culinary Center, we have lots of different really unique spaces that we can now offer as revenue streams to have people rent our facilities and be able to bring in larger events for separate sources of revenue. Our foundation is entering into developing their own new strategic plan to align with the college's new strategic plan. And of course, state budget advocacy is always a priority. And so we'll continue to work on that. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then just finally, these are all the new programs we launched this fall. Some of these programs were approved so late in our recruitment cycle, so we're really looking at this year as an opportunity to really promote some of our new programs. Agricultural business, of course, we're really excited about, and mechatronics was really a direct result of our conversations with our local industry leaders to say, what can we do to help you train a workforce that you need to be able to meet your needs. And those are programs directly related to those conversations. And we did launch our new accelerated business degree program. And I met with the cohort of students. We have 14 in the cohort, which actually doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a good manageable group to start with, since we're kind of piloting this as a new opportunity where students take their courses in a more condensed fashion, go part-time, but they can finish an associate's degree in 18 months. We met with the cohort last week, and they were exactly the population that we had hoped to reach. Many of them had either started college, met several years ago, couldn't finish for a variety of reasons, went out and worked, and now are able to come back and finish something that still accommodates their work schedule. I think almost all of them work full-time, and all of them are looking at ways to leverage this degree to be able to either advance where they are or look at other opportunities. So that was really the population we had hoped to attract, and so far we have. So that's kind of just very briefly what's happening at the college, and I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to you.
Talking about getting number 72, so is that students, bodies, or FTEs?
Bodies. Yeah. And you know, what we do is compare date to date. We still have about 3 or 4 weeks of gaining registrations through our college and high school program. Those registrations don't come in until school gets back in session for K through 12. So our projection for that number is actually growth. So we expect when it all shakes out to be pretty close to budget. So we're feeling pretty good about it.
With the Warren Washington County students being flat, that's because we had saturation on that. We can expect that to be steady state, and then the outside enrollment's up. Is that going to be a trend?
So the answer to your first question is, you know, as we've seen a flattening out, if not decline in high school graduates, and small schools get smaller, as they say, and so we're seeing that sort of flatten out. Also, you know, from an adult learner perspective, we always have that inverse relationship with the economy, and then when employment is, you know, unemployment is less than 4%, people aren't quite as motivated to go back to school. So we've seen, you know, that impact us. And then the Ottawa County area, I mean, the largest growth or the only large population really in the state still is downstate. And so we do quite well in the New York City, Long Island area. And that's an area that we've continued to see an increase over the past 3 years, and very intentional recruitment that we do down there. So that's a population hub. And so we continue to be able to attract students from the downstate area. And in fact, hearing our peers, they're not doing as well with their out-of-county students. In fact, some of our peers that have housing are running 50 to 100 beds vacancy, which is, you know, pretty financially concerning for them. So we feel pretty good that people, they like to come here. They like this campus. They like the region. And so we continue to attract students from the capital region all the way down the Northway.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So the second item on the agenda was a capital projects update, and I think at this point, I'm happy to report that as they wrap up, there isn't much left, and they are still on budget. Maybe we'll be slightly under budget. I'll try to spend every dollar that I can. But they definitely will not be over budget. So I think that's good news at this point since they're wrapping up. In front of you is a SUNY Adirondack implementation strategy for our 2015 master plan, which has a much longer name than that, but essentially that's what it is. It's our master plan. We called it the NSTEM feasibility study and facilities master plan update. So as a reminder, in 2015, we went out and we did a feasibility study for that NSTEM building / addition, but really updated our facilities master plan in general. And creation of a facilities master plan is a requirement for us to get the 50% state match for any of our capital projects. You can't qualify for that if you don't have that facilities master plan, and it does need to be regularly updated. You can't get a match for any project that's not in your facilities master plan. So it usually has some pie-in-the-sky projects in it, and a lot of deferred maintenance and some projects that you know you're going to accomplish. And the reason it includes kind of those pie-in-the-sky projects is so that if for by some windfall or chance or strategic planning you are able to get the funding for them, you can still get the match so that they are on your plan. We engaged JNZ Architects to do ours. We presented it to you at the time. The SUNY Adirondack Board of Trustees approved it in August of 2015. Important to note in here, just under 13 years worth of deferred maintenance, and our Director of Facilities, who's been here for 30 years-ish, tells me that it's really always been about that, about 13 years worth of deferred maintenance that we have at any one point in time. And we get about $800,000 a year to address that deferred maintenance with. So $400,000 of it comes from chargebacks and $400,000 of it comes from the state match. Before we had Wilton and the residence hall, that number was $600,000 a year. So we generate about an additional $100,000 a year in chargeback from those two facilities, which is matched for $200,000. So kind of what we did was take that facilities master plan and go through it and turn it into what we're calling like an implementation strategy. So we took the projects, we spaced them out over a number of years based on feedback from the college community, from our Director of Facilities about what was most important and needed to be addressed. And also just kind of because we are stuck at the $800,000 a year, had to kind of group projects together so that they fit that annual budget. So we went through that work. And at a higher level, I guess, the facilities master plan has about 76, I'm sorry, that back screen's not on, so I hope you can hear me. Has about $76.7 million worth of projects in it. We broke out for you on the left those projects by type. You can see that about 55% of them were rehabilitations to our existing buildings or additions. 13.3% of those projects were critical maintenance, and about 30% of them were new buildings, new projects. We have reduced that need to date by about 9.8, just under $10 million. Culinary is a good example of how we did that. Included in the facilities master plan was building a culinary facility on campus, and we're leasing one off campus instead, so the new building kind of comes off. So that's an example of how we've reduced those projects. And we added about $1.4 million that really weren't in there, including the next facilities master plan. So the net result is about $68 million worth of projects, and we've broken up for you a funding source of how we anticipate funding those. So chargebacks would be about 15%. The counties contributed to the NSTEM building. That's what's listed in there under counties. Grants, 17%, donations, some operating money. There are times where we can do a project out of operating in-house with our own staff or with our operating dollars. And then unknown is about 34% of those projects. So building the dream, the completed projects and the ones that we have in process right now are obviously Adirondack Hall and STEM work and the renovation of the science building. The Student Success Center and Warren Hall, which is also complete at this point in time. The Student Center renovations. Scoville phases 1 and 2, phase 3 is coming up this summer. The Child Care Center renovations, the downtown culinary project, the exterior campus wayfinding signage, the campus landscaping, and a replacement of the humanities roof and the addition of a sprinkler system in that building. The upcoming projects that we're going to talk to you about are Washington Hall renovations. Our nursing department vacated Washington Hall, which left some space that needs to be renovated, which we'll be renovating for our technology division. Scoville phase 3. We're going to get a voice over IP phone system because if you tried to call the college in the last year, it was probably difficult for you and you couldn't leave a voicemail. So our existing phone system is dying, and so we're going to replace it with voice over IP, and then some other deferred maintenance and critical improvements. So the remaining projects that we haven't talked about total about $33 million. We broke them up for you on the left. New buildings would be about 25 million, critical maintenance about 26% of that. I'm sorry, those are percentages. 25%, critical maintenance 26%, and then rehabilitations and additions 48%. Over on the right of that 33.1 million, we've told you how we're funding it, and chargebacks will fund about 20% of it, and about 80% is unknown at this point in time. And these are the projects that are unknown, that we haven't yet figured out how we're going to fund. Some new athletic fields. We do not have a turf field in this climate. Your playing time is extremely compressed if you don't have a turf field. Renovation of an addition to the gymnasium. At this point, it is the oldest building on campus that hasn't been renovated, and it is the most used building on our campus. Our students are in there until we literally kick them out at midnight every single night because we have to clean the building. So it's in desperate repair at this point. Exterior stairs between the upper and lower quad are my personal pet peeve. There is no way to get from the upper quad to the lower quad without walking through an academic building or around the entire exterior of the campus. They're like a cool $1 million in the plan. A new maintenance facility, which does not sound important, but if you've ever seen our maintenance facility, you would understand why it is. It's also located directly next to the Child Care Center, and so all delivery maintenance need to drive through our entire campus in order to get to it. So along with that goes relocation of the North Entry Drive so that there would be a much safer way for those vehicles to enter our campus and not actually go through the circle and the student crosswalks. And what we have not yet accounted for in this plan is any possible revenue that we would receive on an annual basis from the Adirondack Housing Association and or the foundation for that matter. So, for example, renovation of the gym or new athletic fields is a perfect opportunity to dedicate funds to something like that that directly benefits students. Does anybody have any questions about our plan to implement the facilities master plan? Yes.
What's unknown, is that yet to be determined?
That's a funding source, unknown funding source, so yep,
Like you don't know where the money's coming from, you still need to find it.
exactly. The only money we know of at this point in time is our annual chargebacks, $800,000 a year. Yes.
Could you go back and give me just a brief idea of new programs you have coming up? You have the agricultural business program. Can you
Sure.
kind of give me an idea what that is?
You want to talk about that?
So agricultural business actually had been in the works for a couple of years. It's a combination of some agricultural science-based courses in terms of soil and sustainable farming practices in general, and then a business aspect to it. Because when we spoke with our farming community, our agricultural community, and farming in general, what they said is you don't really need to teach us how to farm. What we need is some business acumen so that we can better operate the farms that we have, or for those who are small startup entrepreneurs to really have some of that business background. So the program is actually more heavily focused on business, but it's a combination of science and business together in one program.
So you're teaching students how to run a business.
Correct,
In
with some
okay.
aspects of farming. And so part of the program is will require students to go out in the field, maybe literally, as part of their internship program, but also to be able to apply those business skills to how to run a business.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else you want me to cover?
Just a quick question, and doesn't your program enable students to go on to another ag program?
Absolutely.
And you worked with Cornell and Cobleskill and...
Yep, we have direct transfer relationship, particularly with Cobleskill, because they have a very similar program where a lot of course, students from this region go to. And so we were hoping that for some of our students in Washington County and Warren County who might have been looking at Cobleskill, they might be able to save some money to stay home for a couple of years and then move on to Cobleskill. Because we have even heard of students that one of the reasons they might not have been able to complete at Cobleskill is because they were coming home almost every weekend to maybe participate in their own family business, and it makes it difficult to be successful. So we're hoping to have also fill that gap.
That's what we're finding in our area. I'm from White Creek, and we have a farming community down there.
Yeah.
And we find a lot of our students go to Cobleskill.
Right,
But they are coming home and
Exactly.
to help on the farm.
exactly.
So I'm trying to find a way to get more of our students to come up here
Sure.
because it's a lot shorter distance and
Of
we're
course.
saving on a lot of money without the housing and the rest of
So
it.
we'd be happy to talk with you and maybe we can figure out how to help, we can work together on that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else about any of our new programs?
The next thing on our list, and the only thing on our list that requires action from you today, is our 2019-20 capital request. Important to note about this request, it does not require any contribution from either county. We're using solely chargebacks and third-party donations to fund these projects. And they are mostly critical maintenance. So Scoville Phase 3 is some critical maintenance in our Scoville Learning Center that will make it a much better environment for our technology, our information technology department, as well as our library. We have some remaining money to request from the Warren Hall Student Center project. We originally were not going to renovate the bathrooms in that building, and it just kind of didn't make sense as the building became beautiful and new to have to be bathrooms from the 70s. So the FSA donated the local share to renovate those bathrooms, so we're just requesting the 50% match from the state. That project's already done, we already have those funds in hand. Culinary Center FF&E is essentially the same thing. So we're just requesting the 50% match from the state for the Culinary Center FF&E. We've already raised those funds, that project is already complete. Dear Love Miller Auditorium is a replacement of the seating in there. Several of the seats are in pretty rough shape. Bryan Hall classroom renovations. We intend to renovate at least one of the classrooms in this building to assist us with providing one long-distance education to some of our partners. And again, those foundations were raised by the foundation when this building was built, so they're already here and in hand. A replacement of the gym floor, so we're going to kind of peck away at the gym as we can, and at this point, the gym floor cannot be sanded and refinished one more time. It's basically at the end of its useful life, so we're going to replace that. And adding a generator for information technology so that every time the power goes out, all of the technology on campus doesn't need to be rebooted. And phone system phase 2, so we already discussed the phone system. We had one of the projects that was so large that we couldn't afford to do it all in 1 year, and we had to break it up over 2, so we've already applied for phone system phase 1 last year, and it was approved in April, so this is phase 2 of that project. And you can see the local share capital chargebacks that we plan to apply to these are $389,950, plus the donations, which are just under $400, gets us to our $785,000. And we're seeking no county contribution. Does anyone have any questions about these deferred maintenance projects? Okay, we drafted resolutions for you because the language is a little bit different this year from SUNY. So each of your secretaries has those resolutions, and I don't know if we passed them out to the chairs. We got more. I don't know if anybody would like them. And the last thing that we're going to talk to you about today is 2019-20 budget planning. At this time every year we do give you, yes,
A question.
Sure.
Donations, you specifically say third-party donations. We're all familiar with the fact that you're always looking for donations. I guess there's two questions here. That's a lot of donations, that's pretty good. Well, where are these donations coming from in general, and why third party? What does that mean?
Well, all donations are third-party donations. They're the only sources of funding available for the local share are what New York State education law calls sponsor contributions. So when the sponsors contribute like they did for the Ensign building, and what they call third-party donations, which is why we use that language. But basically it's money that's raised by the SUNY Adirondack Foundation or our Faculty Student Association. And the college rarely accepts donations directly. The donations usually come from either of those two entities. Does that make sense?
For example, the foundation, it could be from local businesses, it could be from an individual donor, it just depends on the project and, who's interested in doing that. The foundation does annual campaigning, annual giving, but when we have a special project like culinary, for example, we targeted certain businesses that would have a strong interest in that success. And we actually did really well. We had some new donors, we had new donors that had never given us a sizable donation, and they did. So we try to obviously be strategic about the foundation's work and focusing on businesses, corporations, and also individuals.
Okay, thank you.
And some of those were raised quite a while ago. So the Bryan Hall donation was from the campaign to build Bryan Hall, this building that we're sitting in right now. And so there was money left over from that was turned into a fund to fund future maintenance of the building, which is what we're doing right now. We hope to be able to do the same thing with Hempstead.
Thank you.
Those reservations are done, or is there still money that'll be left in that fund?
Yep. Off the top of my head, I think there'll still be $500,000 in there, which would be
From
much.
the foundation's campaign that exceeded our goals, so.
The 1920 budget planning, so just to give you high-level overview, it doesn't really start for us until December, but we do like to talk to you about it at this time every year. Very important for us again this year, statewide advocacy efforts. They will begin in October of this year, hopefully, and the presidents intend to continue to advocate for what they're calling stable funding or a floor, with the addition of a per FTE amount, so that there's some understanding that there is a cost of doing business. The doors have to be open, the lights have to be on. The majority of our personnel expenses are not enrollment dependent and don't fluctuate based on enrollment. So kind of an understanding of there is a level that's necessary to operate a business, fixed costs, and then the variable costs, kind of the per FTE model. There's also a lot of discussion about the fact that the FTE is no longer an FTE, right? So you could have 5 students make up one FTE, but those 5 students all require advising, counseling, all the different services. So the idea that historically one FTE was one student really doesn't work in today's higher education world. College budget preparation for us begins in December, so that everyone knows. And this year we will include county representatives in December and February because those are the months that work best for them. And we anticipate asking for at least a 2% increase in our sponsor contribution, which we have historically done. It is extremely critical to our chargeback rate and our chargeback revenue for that to happen because it is a direct correlation. The chargeback calculation is exactly the sponsor contribution divided by the sponsored FTE. So it's pretty critical for us. And it doesn't really even cover our personnel increases. So our standard negotiated personnel increases are about 2.7%. They are the largest piece of the college's budget. So it's difficult for us to kind of maintain our revenue sources and to really maintain not increasing the amount of revenue that we get from our students. And so Eric and I are working to finish the long-term financial plan that we presented to you at this time last year. And when we do, we'll probably come back to probably each of your committees individually, unless you want to meet jointly again. But it would be at a time when you usually don't, and I think it's difficult for you to schedule these joint meetings. So as soon as we get that work completed, we'll be bringing it back to you. It doesn't really say much different than it did last year, though. Does anybody have any questions? Sure. All right, that's all we have for today, but I think you have some action to take on our capital projects.
Actually, Anne Marie,
Yes.
a year or two ago, we purchased the red house over there. And I understand why, but do we have any future plans for that side of the campus, or?
We have not discussed any definitive plans. There are a lot of ideas out there, and there are a lot of people that really want that house to belong to their program. But what we asked the college community was to just give us the space to finish the existing projects that we had before we started having those discussions. So those discussions should start this fall, along with discussing the small renovation of Washington Hall for the technology division.
So you just need to adopt this at a public hearing, or we're just adopting the plan?
The capital request, and then it goes to your full board.
Yeah. So I need a motion from our committee, college committee.
I'll move it.
Is there a second? Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried.
Let's move to finance.
And for Warren County, I'll ask the personnel and SUNY Adirondack Committee to introduce the resolution. For a motion by Supervisor Leggett, and a second, Supervisor McGill. All those in favor?
Aye.
And we'll turn it over to finance.
Okay, and this is to support the Adirondack City College capital improvement plan for 2019 and 20. And basically, it's resolved that the sponsor's share of the cost of the project of $782,450 shall be paid from accumulated capital chargeback funds and/or other resources, including donations that the college may receive. Therefore, no monies from either county. Motion made by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Garrity. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Finance, did you move that to finance?
We're ready for you.
Do we have a motion to follow suit in Washington County? Motion by Dave Ryan, seconded by Matt Hicks. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And before we adjourn, Warren County has one other slight issue that we need to take action on. This way we don't have to meet again prior to our board meeting. And it was something that came out of the last finance meeting, and that was, if you recall, there was an amount to not exceed $35,000, and that was payment for past due taxes to Saratoga County. So we found out the amount happened to be a little bit higher. I think it was shy of $41,000 or $42,000. So I would like to increase that $35,000 to $50,000. Therefore, if there's any other minor increases, we can accommodate that. So, motion made by Supervisor Devitt, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all, and hope to see you this afternoon at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Right out in the green, I guess we're calling it the Oval now, not the Oval Office. Green Oval.